जो मांगे ठाकुर अपने ते सोई सोई देवै जो मांगे ठाकुर अपने ते सोई सोई देवै नानक दास मुख ते जो बोले इहाँ उहाँ सच होवे नानक दास मुख ते जो बोले इहाँ उहाँ सच होवे जो मांगे ठाकुर अपने ते सोई सोई देवै
How can we determine the real guru from the false guru?
Right. Actually, not as simple as it seems, because it depends from the level of the inquirer. So one who is at a certain level of knowing, they will automatically know. But for a beginner or for a seeker, things can be very difficult, because false gurus or false prophets or false individuals are very clever at using intellect and even mindfulness to disguise their real identities or the real self, because they are ego beings and they just want to promote the path of ego or the path of worship of themselves. So the first thing is that a real holy master never asks you to worship them. They ask you to listen to the teachings and devote yourself to the practices they give to you and become one with them, attain their level. They don't say that we are better than you. They just say that we are enlightened. We have the awareness that you do not have. But that doesn't mean you cannot attain the same. So masters are always really kind and really humble. Whereas false gurus or false prophets, they are all about them, worshipping them, following them. And if you don't, there is a consequence. So they use fear tactics, try and win you on board and saying, if you don't follow my path, if you don't follow my way, you'll be condemned in hell forever. So by using such means of fear rather than love, masters always are positive. They all speak to you from a position of love. They say, hey, look, you want to have a more peaceful life, a more blessed life, and you want to ensure that your afterlife is peaceful and blissful, then why not follow my example? This is my experience. This is what I'm doing about it. And if you want to see what I see, follow this path, spiritual practice, and you can attain the same. And I will support you all the way. No threats, no cleverness, no business actions. Nothing is given. So false spiritual teachers or claimed spiritual teachers who feel that they have attained something are doing this only from the ego. They're all subject to the mind, and they're all come from the level of the mind and the ego. Now, some of them are more, I could say, less aggressive than others. Some of them come from a more loving, more peaceful way, but still there are certain elements in their teaching that give the game away that they've not reached the higher state. Whether it's missing certain essential parts of the teachings when you compare them to, say, a perfect living master, or simply that they just have a half attempt at something. Let me give you a little breakdown on a very more simple term of how to recognize, say, a real spiritual teacher, one who's going to elevate you to the highest realm, as opposed to the false one. The first thing is that the false ones express delusions of high attainment. So they say to others that they have attained a certain level, but they have not. And this is betrayed by their private life, because their private life does not reflect their claim. They may also promote the practice of rituals, idol worship, the use of charms, or mere cultural practices for spiritual reasons. They also speak only from the knowledge of books and scripture, not from actual high-level experiences. So such claimants are not the real deal. They have kidded themselves because they've attained a certain level of knowledge into thinking that they are something special. And worse still, they fall in the trap of ego because others say, oh, you must be great. You have helped me a great deal. You are doing this for me. You are doing that for me. You must be a master. You must be somebody of high attainment. And they actually fall into that trap. So sometimes they get sucked into this way of life, and then they lead people nowhere in the end. And they also have to suffer for that themselves. The second recognition is of a false guru, you could say, is that they promote blind faith. They do not allow you to question or validate what they're teaching you. Or they fob off sincere inquiries. They simply say, do as I say. If you don't, you will go to hell. And don't ask any questions. And there are some well-known religions who believe in that. If you question the book, it's heresy. It is haram. And it is punishment. And but if you think about it, if it's given by a merciful Lord or a true Lord, why would he punish somebody who's merely inquiring about how to better themselves or how to understand themselves on their sacred path? So again, these ones who promote the ideal that any questioning of that religion or that belief system is punishable even by death. Yeah, one must question the validity of that motor or that path. The third thing is that false claims of detachment. So they say that they're no longer attached to family, friends, pets, luxuries, status, or lavish possessions in their life, that they merely use these as tools, yet their private life betrays this. So they might look as if they're really detached and separate, but actually they're very much attached privately to these things, and that they hoard things around them. And it's not because they just want to have a practical use of them. They're obsessed by them. When family die, or when pets die, or when they lose something, they're crying and hollering just like the other human beings. What is the difference between them? Clearly their path has not brought them peace of heart and mind as everybody else. So this is another recognition, because they cling on to family and friends and so on. Another sign is what some people refer to as emotional numbing or repression. It's often the case that people who set themselves up as holy masters or holy teachers of some sort are actually doing so because they have been so traumatized in life that they want to find some meaning in life for themselves. So they use this as a means of numbing their trauma, their past trauma, by setting themselves up as something special and helping others. So they're not evil in the sense that they're not openly misleading, but they're using it to help, I could say, comfort them of the life that they've had. And they're thinking, let me then instead throw myself into helping others. But as a result of this, others start looking up to them and saying, hey, you're helping us. You must be a noble person. You must be very saintly. You must be very, so kind and so on. Let's worship you, or let's follow you. So this is another sign, because such people often have outbursts of frustration, anxiety, or anger, which betray their peaceful, loving status. So that's how that part can be recognized. Then there are those who demonstrate dictatorial type tactics. So they have an overemphasis on strict discipline. They emphasize dogmatic or dictatorial regimes that are unnecessarily harsh. And as a result, they say that you should punish yourself, you should do this, you are worthless, you are lower than a worm, you must make yourself worthy by punishing yourself. And there's very strict rules that you have to do this and you have to do that. And unless you're in constant state of suffering and difficulty, you're not worthy of salvation. So then you think to yourself, really? I'm already suffering in life, and the reason why I'm reaching out for spirituality because I want to relieve my suffering. But instead, these ones are saying, no, endure more suffering in the hope that you will be relieved of this. Logically, this doesn't quite make sense. But nevertheless, so these ones overemphasize this type of discipline. Then there's the opposite approach, the overly relaxed approach to spiritual practice. Say, oh, it doesn't matter. You know, everything is what it is. Just do whatever you want. And all you have to do is just let go and go with the flow, but not with any purpose. Just live life as it is, enjoy what comes your way, make the most of it. And as long as you're doing that and you're not outwardly going about looking for things, then that's a type of spiritual practice that will give you some sort of reward at the end. Then you have those who go even further. There are some cults who follow this example, that they promote immorality or freedom of expression as a means of enlightenment, such as group sexual practices, drug-taking sessions, a failure to fulfill one's duties or take responsibilities in life, like running away from life and just going to extremes. Such people are actually harmful to society rather than of any benefit at all, and they should be avoided. Then the next one is the adopting of or imitating the latest spiritual fads and trends. So you'll find some so-called holy or enlightened ones simply follow a trend. Particularly in the West, you see this. You know, you'll see some people were ordinary individuals and suddenly now they're hailed as some spiritual leader. You know, if you look at the top 25 list of spiritual leaders that the world recognizes, most of them are simply following some sort of fad or trend in spirituality of the day. They have no real knowledge. But by following this trend or copying what another holy master has done, they are seen to be spiritual and enlightened beings, and they appear on Oprah Winfrey and being interviewed, you know, and some of them are very famous. But they're just following a line of either succession that they've been just brought up into, some cultural trend that they've been born into, or they adopt one. You know, they are somebody who was perhaps an ordinary human being, a football player or a singer, and suddenly they become a cult hero overnight because they've had some realization, and now they're suddenly able to impart wisdom and knowledge to others. So again, looking at this activity, we can see that, hold on, and then they tend to change their way of behaving over time. So they will suddenly follow one trend and then decide, no, let's now do this and let's now do that. I know it's the will of the Lord, or it's the will of the powers that be that we should now do this and we should now do that. They seem to be inconsistent in the way they practice over time. Then there are those who foster damning judgment. So, you know, they say either if you don't follow our path, you will be damned and you'll be condemned. Only our system will save you. And you have no choice in the matter. We will discriminate against those who follow our system or not. And if they don't follow our system, we'll either convert you or kill you. And really you have to think to yourself, is this the loving kindness of a merciful Lord? Or is this just our egomaniacs trying to portray themselves as something spiritual? Then you have those actively seeking attention or public audiences. So they go about trying to preach rather than teach, meaning they push themselves forward. Hey, I'm a master, I am this, I am that. You must follow me. Otherwise, you know, you're not going to have happiness in life. So they actively promote or seek audiences or push forward their spiritual message in a way that is not in keeping with true spirituality of humility, compassion, kindness, and non-ego. So clearly these people are on an ego path of self-grandizement, as it's called, or self-glory, and they want others to recognize their glory and their wonderfulness, and so on. Then there are those who charge fees for attending spiritual sessions. and spiritual practices, and for receiving spiritual instruction or advice. So, for example, you have to go to one of their discourses and there's a fee charged, and they stand on the stage and they give their teachings to everybody, but you have to pay for that seat. You have to pay for that privilege. Such beings are simple businessmen masquerading as spiritual teachers. And they're just simply in there for $1, to earn $1 and to enjoy a lavish lifestyle on the backs of true seekers who are none the wiser, thinking that, yes, this is the way forward because we have to, after all, pay for everything else. We pay for our food, we pay for our electricity. Why not pay for spiritual knowledge? So clearly they're misguided in that aspect. And finally, we have those who just simply pretend to be spiritual teachers and so on, just for ego's sake, because they have such a big ego and they're egomaniacs that they decide that they don't want to be just mundane and nobody in life. They want to actually be something special. So when you look into their background, look into how they work, it doesn't tally up. Their way of life and their activities and so on doesn't match what they actually proclaim to be. For example, they may be some sort of a kind of a pop idol, and suddenly they become a spiritual teacher, or they may be into fast cars, or into extreme sports, or into some sort of extreme activities or lavishness of life. Yet they proclaim themselves as some sort of guru and some sort of teacher, because they put on the robes, they suddenly get away from their fast-paced, hectic life, and they sit down and give teaching. So these are another form of misleading spiritual teachers who we should avoid. So hopefully that's provided a competent list. And if you find that any one of those false activities or traits is found to be present in your spiritual leader, spiritual advisor, or spiritual organization, and you are a spiritual seeker of high, not just one looking to be part of a cultural system, trend, or spiritual club, or are not merely just a curiosity seeker, then you should question the validity of what you are following or who you're placing your trust upon. Because these non-spiritual or impious traits are known as shadow tendencies in the spiritual world that surround spiritual practitioners who are afflicted by these traits, and thus cause their followers to go through the same grief as they are following. So yeah, I think I've explained enough about false practitioners to answer that question, and false gurus.